All right, folks, it's about 2 minutes past the hour here. Welcome. My name is Eric Valiquette. I'm the CEO of the Blockchain Supply Chain Association. Thank you for joining to this session with DLT Labs. A quick introduction about the association today. So we are the BSCA. We have been in business since 2019, and we do three things. We do some advocacy work. So we talk with policymakers and standards bodies globally to understand the changing priorities in the supply chain world as it relates to blockchain technology and vice versa. Of course, my favorite word, collaboration, working together, sharing resources, providing resources to folks in need. So if you need a supply chain expert, we have those. And if you need a blockchain expert, of course, we have those. So reach out to us anytime. And a lot still of education. So sessions like this are an important part of what we do, all the way up to creating education material for the community to better understand blockchain technology. Probably not from a coding perspective, because I can't code to save my own life. But from a business perspective, that's why we're here, right? People like myself, people like yourselves, who want to understand blockchain technology. So a bit of our ecosystem, anybody and everybody who is related to supply chain, and that can be, again, as I mentioned, policymakers, government, people like customs and health and agriculture, that all impact today's supply chain, standards bodies as well, we get involved with those. Manufacturing industry, importers, exporters, the people who actually do stuff for a living, the learning people, so universities, colleges, and other associations. We act as their blockchain resource. The logistics world, people who actually move the stuff that we use every day. Trade finance, banking, people who pay for stuff that we move on a daily basis. And of course, technology, and not just blockchain, but IoT and AI and quantum and edge computing, all the new and emerging technologies. We talk about those. We try to understand the rapid state of changing technology and bring more information to you. We started our life back in 2019 here in Canada, and now we have chapters globally. So reach out to your local chapter, head on over to our website to find out more, and we continue to grow globally. So enough about us. You're not here to hear me rambling about the association, although it's very interesting. We are here to learn a bit about blockchain technology as it relates to very important processes. And let me stop sharing my screen here. Perfect. We are here to learn about DLT Labs and the amazing work that they've been doing over the last few years. Those who have been following the space of blockchain and logistics and supply chain have probably heard about what DLT Labs has been doing and what they did with Walmart Canada. Still one of the biggest production platforms globally. And I'm sure the folks at DLT will tell us a bit more about this. First, Francis Lalonde and Pete Gownlock and Jeff Ashcroft, I will let you guys introduce yourselves. You do a much better job than I do. So I will hand over the microphone to you. Thank you for being here.
All right, thank you. Jeff, you want to start?
Sure. My name is Jeff Ashcroft. I've been with DLT Labs now for just over a year, but have been studying potential uses of blockchain and supply chain for well over 6 years, and actually writing about it as well. I was really excited to be able to join DLT because they are at the forefront and actually applying all the things that I'd been studying, and it's been very exciting from that perspective. Prior to DLT, I started my career with HBC and then moved into third-party logistics, a number of IT and consulting roles. So I'll hand it over to Pete.
Hello, folks. Pete Gownlock here. I'm VP of our Freight Solutions at DLT Labs. I've spent a 30-year career now in systems integration, always at the crossroads of transportation, logistics, supply chain logistics, and financing. Very happy to be here with all of you today. Thanks.
All right, my turn now. I'm Francis Lalonde. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for DLT since about 6 months. Before that, I've been a supply chain operator all my life. Last one with Walmart, where I was VP of Transportation for 5 years at Walmart Canada. So I hired DLT, and I probably put them to too much work for about 3 years before joining about 6 months ago. Before that, I was always in supply chain, from food with Cisco to manufacturing of explosive to other retail businesses in Canada. So enough about us. Let's bring the slides up and get going. So first off, well, thank you, Eric and BSCA for having us today. I appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation with a group of very talented folks that I see in the attendee list. We are going to talk to you about the power of blockchain and what we can do with enterprise blockchain with the platform. On the next slide, you'll see the couple of use cases. We're going to talk about payment first and foremost. So Eric referred to it. So that's what we did first and foremost with Walmart Canada. First conversations were 4 years ago, where we completely resolved the freight payment opportunities we had back then. And I say opportunities to be polite. It was a pretty important concern for me as a new VP. And we'll pivot to a driver payroll module, which is very, very interesting, different and state-of-the-art for whoever has a fleet of drivers. Then pivot to DSD, direct store delivery. Very, very powerful platform there that really deserves to be known because it really solves for a lot of things that we couldn't solve for before. And then I'll get everybody's hamster spinning on some of the other verticals that we have in your organization, and we'll leave time for Q&A. So we should be able to do this in 40-something minutes and leave a good 15 for questions at the end. A little bit about us. I'm going to try and do this quick and simple. You see a little bit on platform on the slide and our flagship product around freight. I want to demystify blockchain a bit. Really, the two things that create the magic in what we built it is smart contract and distributed ledger. So everything that we have built in Walmart and in some of the other customers that we will cover later is really using the power of those two tools. And what the smart contract piece does is it helps really digest a ton of complicated data orchestration, hyper automation. So you can crunch a lot of complex things and create one version of the truth, one strong outcome out of it. And you'll get more details, obviously, as we go through the different use cases, and then you'll connect the dots to the power of the smart contract itself. And then the other chunk of it is distributed ledger. We're based on DL, so the distributed ledger creates trust because every output, and you'll see it come up very, very clearly when we go through the freight part, every outcome is an outcome that both parties have agreed upon. So it truly, truly builds trust, and it has truly resolved that payment part that we had at Walmart Canada. So the company has been in business for about 7 years. First couple of years was, developing that very powerful, now today is about 3.5 million lines of code. So very powerful platform. And then the company ran into me when I was on the other side with Walmart Canada. So then we did freight and we did like 7 other things for Walmart Canada after that. And then we're at a place where now we are commercializing the product to quite a few other companies right now, and the business is evolving in various areas of the world. Lots of focus in the 4 buckets you can see there, mainly supply chain and fintech, where we really, really have a powerful story with an amazing ROI, and also some activities bubbling up in the 2 other ones with manufacturing, ESG, mining, etc. Then I will hand it over to Pete to start the freight payment conversation.
Very good. Thank you, Francis. Okay, so what is DL Freight? It is a private permission-based blockchain solution. We're processing freight invoices on the solution. We're doing inbound, outbound, truckload, less than truckload, intermodal shipments, small parcel invoice auditing and processing, last mile delivery invoice processing, whereby the last mile delivery is being delivered from stores to homes via crowdsourced partners such as Uber Eats, DoorDash, etc. There are 1,000+ users on our platform processing invoices from the shippers, the carriers, the vendors that are doing direct store deliveries, auditors, whether they're internal, external, so logistics people, finance people, etc. 132 million IoT messages have been received on the platform. 4 million temperature messages have been sent to us about temperature within the trailer of a vehicle to check for heat or cold chain thresholds within the temperature. So hopefully that gives you a little background on how this is processing. Now, what are some of the features and benefits of the solution? Well, we're processing invoices in real time as a shipment occurs. So they are very accurate because we load the shipper information, carrier information of contracted rates onto our platform. We process them on smart business, smart contracts, applying all of the business rules to the agreed upon contract between a shipper and a carrier. So accurate invoices, and because we are tracking them via IoT devices on trailers, we process the invoice in real time as the shipment occurs. So very timely data. Integrated payments and supply chain financing. So when we get the invoice to an approved invoice status very quickly, eliminating a lot of the disputes and challenges that happen in freight payment today. And we also provide integrations to make payment very efficiently. And if the carrier wants the ability to receive funds very quickly, we offer supply chain financing as well. It's proven to improve relationships between the shippers and the carriers. Use of these smart contracts and the business rules really gives the trust for both the shipper and the carrier that their invoice is processing using the business rules that they're expecting, and it processes each and every invoice consistently. There is no questioning about how to process this invoice that has come from a shipper across a certain lane versus another shipper. If you get two different accounts payable clerks reviewing and auditing an invoice, you don't get that discrepancy between one has a preference for raising a dispute on certain things versus the other. They're very consistently processed to the business rules agreed by the parties, giving them very good trust between each other. And given the reduction in disputes that often happen in a freight invoicing process, it has reduced the carrier's wait for payment, improved the accounts payable process at the shipper. So again, improving those relationships. Carriers are no longer waiting for a mountain of disputes in their invoice processing and their accounts receivable, extending months and months and waiting for payment on certain invoices, because we are processing these invoices extremely efficiently. Cost reduction, I just explained a lot of it in terms of hyper automation and using smart contracts and business rules to process everything about an invoice, knowing that the line haul rate is correct, applying fuel charges correctly, any accessorial charges that happen through the course of a shipment. We're monitoring and approving those through business rules provided by the shipper that the carriers are very much aware of and conscious when they're submitting their accessorial charges. So cost reduction with a very automated, efficient process. Proper handling of the shipments. I mentioned earlier we're receiving well over 100 million IoT messages, 4 million temperature checks and messages from devices within trailers. So ensuring that the shipment and the goods on that shipment are handled properly to the client's expectations. Reduced disputes and the costs. In the Walmart Canada scenario, we reduced disputes by 97% in that environment. The previous process that they were using was needed to be very diligent in the process and down to the penny. And there were a number of disputes raised, which we have been able to resolve with the visibility that is allowed in a shared digital ledger between the two parties, and then again the business rules processing on it. And there's complete transparency. I've mentioned that the rates are loaded on the platform. The business rules are agreed upon by the shippers and the carriers, the trading partners in this transaction, and they have full visibility on the platform to what those rates are. What are the business rules for how my invoice will be calculated? And we're providing full audit logs as blockchain will provide for. Providing a very consistent process and solution for the clients. We can go on to the next slide. Thank you, Jeff. Okay, so this diagram here is an extensive spaghetti diagram. It looks quite complicated, but I'll explain it here pretty quickly, I think. In the middle is our blockchain hub. And so we are a hub for many, many different parties that need visibility into a freight transaction. So on the left here, you have your transportation providers, the crowdsourced partners, the small parcel carriers that are transitioning or transporting goods for Walmart, the carriers themselves that are moving the cargo across the country are all integrated into our system, usually directly from their TMS. So we're not changing the carrier's day-to-day operations. They're using their TMS as they always have, and they can communicate with our platform via API messages is the most common communication protocol with us. We're integrated with CRM, Salesforce, SAP, payment processing platforms over at our shipper clients so that they can do the payment processing. Third-party payment providers to do the payment processing. And then various ERPs, data warehouse solutions such as Tableau or Informatica are receiving the data to do more detailed data analytics for clients as well if they prefer that. Up at the top is the variety of portal users that are accessing the platform. So you can see the different carriers are accessing it, auditors, the shipper, supply chain logistics folks can access it through a user interface portal as well. And interestingly, we segregate the user interface depending on the type of transaction it is. A small parcel transaction is different than a cargo freight transaction. So different views, but all on one platform, processing the engines. At the bottom, we see a notification engine here. And so I mentioned earlier the example of temperature checks, receiving those from the trailer, and the cold chain has been broken. Temperature has breached a certain temperature within the trailer. Well, we have the ability to send out messages automatically to our users to notify them that that event has occurred and there's a problem with the temperature that they're expecting on that shipment. So a very powerful messaging solution. We do wait time messaging. If a driver arrives at a destination and there is no one there at the loading docks to open up and allow them to unload the contents of their trailer, we have a messaging system that communicates with that shipper to indicate that a driver is there. Please open up your loading docks and unload, so that that driver, it saves the shipper potential wait time charges, but it allows that driver a benefit to the driver as well, because they're not in the business to charge wait time charges. They're in the business to get moving down the road to the next delivery that they need to make. And that down in the bottom mid right there, that is our smart contract catalog. So for the various types of business we're processing on the platform, the difference between, you know, how a freight invoice processes versus a small parcel versus a crowdsourced delivered invoice, we have the smart contract engines processing for each one of those different areas loaded into the platform that we configure based on the client requirements. And then up top in the right, that's really a retail logistics environment, whether we're integrated with inventory management or warehouse management systems, control towers to, you know, identify when a shipment arrives. You can tell, is it on time based on its arrival timestamp, but also you want to know, is it an in full for the order that we have placed? And so integration with inventory management systems, warehouse management systems is key to having all of that information collected together, provided in reports to the clients that are interested in that information. All right, next slide, please. Okay, here's just a little difference to explain the difference between a typical freight audit and payment process and solution versus what we're doing in DL Freight. So you can apply new technology to anything in various areas, but we've taken a process improvement as well. And in the top half, this describes a typical freight audit and payment solution where a shipper will have a TMS and the carrier will have a TMS as well. Each of those has their version of the truth. And the shipper will tender out a bill of lading to the carrier. The carrier will receive that and then perform service, do delivery. And when delivery is complete down the line, they will send an invoice over to the shipper, at which point the shipper starts their audit at this point. And it could be days after delivery. In a lot of cases, it is quite honestly weeks after delivery has occurred that an invoice will come in from the carrier, and your shipper's accounts payable team, they're starting their audit on the process at this time. Whereas in the bottom diagram, we have one single document that is on the blockchain in a collaborative zone for these two, shipper and carrier, to enhance that invoice. It starts out with the tender information, and then the carrier adds as the shipment is occurring, the additional information such as accessorial charges that happen, the unknown charges that happen during a shipment, wait time charges, they arrive at a DC or a store and they're asked to move a trailer, so a shunt charge. They arrive at a DC and the DC says we're only accepting Black Friday goods right now, so park your trailer over there in our yard, or better yet, take it back to your yard and leave it there for a day or several days, and we'll contact you when we can unload that. So each one of these accessorial charges, that is really where a lot of challenge happens in a freight invoice processing. And we have the carrier submit those through, again, API integrations with their TMSs, a very easy process on our portal. But not only that, we are doing approvals of these invoices immediately, of these accessorial charges immediately through business rules or notifications over to the shipper that this accessorial charge breaches all of the business rules that you have. You do need to have someone take a look at that. And at the end of this process, delivery has occurred. The minute that the driver leaves the final destination and has done their delivery, this invoice is ready to be submitted and is in fact submitted by the carriers for payment. But more importantly, it's been audited in real time as the shipment has occurred. So the minute that driver leaves, they can submit this invoice and have confidence that it is not being audited further. It is approved now, and they'll just be waiting for their payment terms. Next slide. Okay, so adding new technologies and innovative technologies can be done and has been done over many decades in industries. It's often is not enough though. So we did some process improvements to reach the benefits that we've seen with this program and this solution here. And in fact, we reduced the number of steps from, this is a typical freight payment process. We reduced the steps from 11 here down to 5, which you'll see in the next, if we move forward here. So yes, not only, you don't put technology onto a broken process as it is, but you look for process improvements while you're implementing the solution. That was a key lesson learned as we went through this process and developed the solution. And then next slide, please, Jeff. Okay, a little bit about the cost savings, and this is a generic cost savings calculator, which we have and are happy to do with any potential clients. You just need 8 questions to be asked in terms of, well, what are the number of annual shipments? What is your annual freight spend in the various modes: truckload, less than truckload, intermodal, small parcel? And then where do the savings come from? Well, your standard accounts payable operations processes. We can save a significant amount there. Those disputes, eliminating those disputes that often happen in a freight invoice processing environment, we save a significant amount for the clients there. Small parcel savings can be significant as well with the audit process. And then efficiency in your payment process, and of course, including financial supply chain financing opportunities as well, can save both the shipper a significant cost. This is a shipper ROI calculator, but there are cost savings for the carrier as well. The more efficient they're processing with a shipper and if their invoices, they're saving there. And then on the right, just some comparison between what the DL Freight solution is offering versus a typical freight audit and payment process. Number one being full visibility. to the agreed upon rates and contracts between each other. I mentioned earlier, often a shipper will have their version of the truth, a carrier will have a different version of the truth, and it is challenging for them to meet up. Whereas this is a hub, collaborative zone between the two partners. Blockchain, its inherent full visibility for the different trading partners and view of them. Those are just a couple. There are many there, which I'm assuming we will make this slide deck available to the group following the presentation. So I'll leave it there, and you can review all of those differences when you would receive that deck coming forward.
Yeah, I'll add a couple seconds to it as when I was on the customer on the other side. In 1 minute, I started this. I have my first carrier conference back at Walmart Canada, and at the end of the conference, there's 100 people lined up with me, and they're not the SVP of sales. A lot of them are the CFOs, which kind of got me scared a bit. So, hey, how are you? Nice to meet you. Oh, by the way, you owe me $2 million. And then the next person in line, oh, you owe me $3 million. And at the end of the line, I think I was $35 million in the hole. And I thought I wouldn't survive my first P&L meeting at Walmart Canada, quite honestly. So we knew we had to fix it, right? Like, this was urgent. The erosion of trust and collaboration with the carrier base was very, very big. And this completely killed it, right? Like, it went from that crazy 40% match to 98.5%, as Pete said, but it disappeared. Like, it was a standard QBR, quarterly business review item. We would start with receivables. I would start the QBR by saying, dear carrier A, how much money do I owe you past payment terms? And it's not that we didn't want to pay, right? We were just not singing the same song, to Pete's point about version of the truth. We're just different. And after 1 round, 2 rounds of QBR, like, it was gone. And nobody wanted to talk about receivables anymore. And the same CFOs would show up from time to time, and they would ask me how my kids were doing and what I did for vacation, instead of reminding me that I owe them money. So, yeah, it completely eliminated that payment concern that we had at Walmart. Okay, over to you, Jeff.
Great. So thanks, Pete and Francis. I'm here to share with you some details about our Driver Payroll Module, which is one of our newer solutions. And this is a complete end-to-end solution for paying both internal and external drivers. And it has the added ability to motivate and incentivize your drivers to be the best that they can be. So if you look at it, the end-to-end flow, it really does start with your delivery drivers. The shipment data is automatically populated based on the deliveries that they're making. And all that is captured from the TMS and brought into the platform. And any additions or changes that happen during the delivery, very similar to the other process that you saw from Pete, are captured. And then once the day's work is complete, that information can be transferred up to their supervisor for review, etc. But the most important thing is within the platform, again, are the smart contracts, and those are able to apply logic and basically if it's a very straightforward processing requirement with not a lot of outside of the tolerance numbers, etc., it can be automatically processed and moved through, allowing people to really deal with the exceptions rather than having to slog through a whole bunch of papers or spreadsheets or however it had been done previously to applying the solution. Once that information is captured and brought through and approved by the supervisor, it can go through to the approving manager, and then it can move over to human resources, where they are able to capture any information that they need, look into any exceptions or disputes that have been raised as part of the process to make sure those are resolved. and capture, again, any of the performance metrics that are available through this process, which, really is an extension beyond, traditional driver pay sheets and capturing of that data. And once that's done and everyone's ready to be paid, the information can pass over to finance if it's an internal payment solution, or if you're working with an external provider, you're able to automatically interface to them or send them, CSV information to generate the payments to the drivers on a timely and relatively seamless basis. So what are the key features of our driver payroll module? The interface is very simple and easy to both configure and use for both the drivers as well as the administrators. As I mentioned, there are automated smart contracts that are used to process straightforward submissions without user intervention. And most importantly, the blockchain-based system allows this payroll module to be tamper-proof and immutable, and that maintains the trust between the drivers and the company. And, again, savings are very important, especially those that are moving from a paper-based system or a spreadsheet system to capture this information. When it is, literally gathered, from the driver activity and from their inputs on a mobile device, it's much more powerful and can eliminate a lot of errors and costly discussions and disputes, similar to the freight side. And, as any party or stakeholder in the process can raise a dispute and add, their own comments and details to it, these can then be very easily received by the supervisors or approving managers so that they can very quickly and easily be resolved. So what are the benefits? The system is actually designed in a manner that allows you to pay the drivers in any way you choose. So you're not limited by your system as to how you have to pay your drivers. So, whether it's per hour, per mile, per stop, and most importantly, as I mentioned before, you're able to add in those incentives and bonuses to pay on performance. And, a lot of people do talk about employee experience and engagement. And honestly, there's no doubt that a solution like this will help you to recruit and retain your drivers. It's just so much easier to use. And, if they've come from an environment where, they've had to have all these papers and, say the window's open and the paper blows out the window and they've lost, all the information that they needed from the day's shipments, it's just a much smoother way of operating. And, as I mentioned earlier, the ability to incentivize your drivers for safety, soft driving skills, sustainability, and services to your customer, all these will contribute even further to your bottom line. So, as far as the applications, there are lots of types of drivers out there. So, whether you are operating your own private fleet and you have your own company drivers or contract drivers that you're working with, or if you're an e-commerce parcel delivery solution, whether that be crowdsourced or, just traditional drivers or even owner operators within the delivery side. Trucking company operators and their drivers can also utilize this solution. And even owner operators, folks where, they would collect all their information and after a hard day of driving, come home and, have to sit at the kitchen table and slog through all this paper to get these invoices done and paid. When you're able to capture this information as you're operating, it becomes, dramatically better and really does improve their experience, within the operations. And, I think that's really, covers it, and I'll be interested to see any questions that you might have. But with that, I'll turn it over to Francis Lalonde, our Chief Commercial Officer, to talk about our DLDSD solution.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. And you think of driver payroll, like to me, it's super simple. There's not going to be any more drivers, right? We know we have a driver shortage. So what happens? Everybody does the same thing, and you crank up the rates for the drivers. But is that the right thing to do, or do you want to attract, retain the best drivers? And that's what it does, right? To the previous slide that Jeff went through with the benefits. Take a number, $25 an hour. Do you want to have a driver at $25 an hour that's just an average driver, or you want to have that base plus someone who's better on MPG and drive sustainability, to Jeff's point. Someone that doesn't have hard brake, sudden turn, overspeed, so drive safety, so you don't have an accident on the truck and you don't have the reputational damage of having your name that just rear-ended a family of 4 in a minivan. And the third one is the service part, right? You bring the geofence on time, good. You made an on-time delivery. It has a positive impact. Yeah, you want to pay more money to that driver who does well on those 3 things and probably less money to the other driver who doesn't do that, right? So it really empowers you to attract, retain the drivers who are going to be the best drivers, right? So that really is exciting. I wanted to do that still back when I was at Walmart, and I ran out of time to do it. So I don't think there's a good solution out there. So this is very, very different, innovative. Pivot to DSD. So I'm going to go quick. So quick, supply chain 101. What is DSD? The traditional supply chain, right? The supplier to DC, DC to store. That part is well managed everywhere in North America. Typically, there's on time, in full. There's good notions there, and the goods flow actually very efficiently. But the direct store delivery, where the suppliers ship direct to the stores, which again happens with often it's the local guys. The milk run is the traditional example. You do this with bakery, with all the quick shelf life product. That part is a bit different. We go on the next slide, and it will show what the current state is for DSD, and it's just not a business that is managed as well as the traditional supply chain. There's lack of awareness, there's lack of visibility, there's no notion of OTIF, like on time and in full. Trucks are delayed. The folks in the stores now all have to do the same thing with online grocery throughout the years, or even e-commerce. You have to do picks in the stores. You do the picks at 5 a.m. in the morning, but then the 5 trucks you wanted, they show up at 9 a.m., so you've passed that point. So now you didn't have the product in stock for your customer. You couldn't pick the right thing. You did a substitution. And there's a whole host of costs also being lost with 7 trucks competing for the same door in the stores. And so far, I've yet to see a shipper or a retailer tell me that they're doing a very, very good job on DSD and it's well organized. It seems like everybody just has the same opportunities. So how do we fix it? Well, on the next slide, we got about 5 things that are important. And that image actually is what it is in the real world, right? It's you got a store with 1, 2 doors available, 3 doors maybe. There's probably a truck there that is stuck there because you have to floor unload it potentially. So then you have 1, maybe 2 doors, and then all the other loads, the DSD, everybody competes for that door. So you have 7 trucks that happen at the same time. They all show up at the same time. You're inefficient, and you're burying that cost in your supply chain. And the worst thing is it's mainly hidden in prepaid, which is very, very tough to gain an understanding. So how do we fix it, right? We built that schedule optimizer for the stores. So it's basically an inbound scheduler on steroids. As it's easy to manage the front end of the stores if the back end of the store is in a good place. This manages the back end of the store. It manages the doors. So we're not driving 7 appointments for freezer goods because we won't be able to fit it in the freezer, obviously, right? So it respects the chamber of the stores. It utilizes the doors properly. So it says Coke, you have to be there 5 to 7, Pepsi 6 to 8, the other guy, whatever at this time. So it really drives in an organized fashion how we will debottleneck the back store and debottleneck the doors so that the goods make it on time in the stores. The schedule itself has crazy optimizing opportunities. You can shut down a day for a cycle count. You can do everything else, and it will repurpose and rejig the whole schedule. So you want to drive optimization, and you need to be nimble and agile because things happen every day, and you can do that, which is really, really impressive. The benefits that we get out of it sits in a couple places. Item 1 is pre-substitution, because it's a very easy KPI to track. So you're supposed to do picks in the morning for your customer at the store. At 5 a.m. you do the picks. You're supposed to pick that. You don't have that in stock. So you go and you take another pen. So you do a substitution. So one, you disappointed the customer, and two, you gave probably a higher margin item, a higher cost item. So you're taking that hit. So pre-substitution is a big deal, right, for the retailers. So it affects customer satisfaction. It affects dollars, right? So there's a big impact on pre-sub and therefore sales for the DSD vendors. There's a huge reduction cost because that image goes away, because you don't have 7 people showing up at the same time. And if someone shows outside of their window, the stores know that, hey, you're the next appointment. I'm not unloading you for another 5 hours, so you're going to have to wait if you're trying to get in early. So you really drive that discipline, and that cost goes away. And then it's an opportunity to split the cost or do whatever everybody wants to drive that, bring that value back between suppliers, if it's prepaid, and the retailers. On time is an amazing opportunity, easy to do. You connect with the geofence, and then you start to hit on time. What we were doing for traditional supply chain at Walmart for on time was just, if you hit on time and you beat the target, you're going to get a check at the end of the year. And we were rewarding the carriers that were overperforming, and we would get a check for the carriers who were underperforming. So same thing can apply on this one. And then you drive a win-win with whoever is delivering in the store. And the last technical opportunity is in full, right? Which typically everybody is connected with in full on traditional supply chain. So if you're supposed to ship 100 iPhones, but you only ship 40, then you're going to get a fine. But for DSD, often it doesn't happen, right? So there's not that ecosystem of collaboration that drives success and drives goods on the shelf. Because at the end of the day, nobody wants to find anybody in this business. Shippers and retailers all have the same objective. They want goods on the shelves for their customers. So these are the big benefits. What I heard, I can't quantify this yet, but I heard from a few of my Walmart store manager friends back then was they actually thought we reduced their overtime. There's the time to unload the trailer is the time to unload the trailer. But because they now had predictability, they know when the trailers would show up, they wouldn't have to rush to ask, hey, Pete, can you stay for another 2 hours in overtime to unload that trailer because the trailer just showed up? Now they could predict it. They would have Pete scheduled at the right time. And they went away from that overtime firefighting. Oh, we need that truck in early, right? So that is DSD in a nutshell, folks. Very powerful platform. Now being replicated to folks are talking to us with convenience stores because they have the same bottlenecks. They have to do something different. So we're talking to the convenience to some folks in Europe up there, similar with some of the bottleneck around imports, port, cross-dock operation. It's the same bottleneck, really. So the replicability of that DSD for those folks is massive. And then last slide, and then I'll shut up and we'll open it up to question. Good to show a bit of the other verticals because it gets everybody's hamster spinning on what we can do. Hence the title of, what if blockchain can do it all? Because we're also doing mining, basically doing brand integrity, right? Following product all the way into A to Z in ensuring quality standards, no child labor in some of the extraction, that everything is done in a sustainable way. So same thing for fuel in Bangkok Aviation Fuel Service, where we're basically the fuel vertical from purchasing the fuel to the folks putting in the fuel, customs, the people receiving the bill, and lots of things are bubbling up on the NFT and ESG front. I'm not sure who's going to win this one first, but we're going to be doing a ton of that in the next little while because the requests are coming in every day. And the last one is actually manufacturing, which has been the slowest channel so far, which things tend to move a bit slower in manufacturing. But we're already getting those requests. We're going to be lining up a few more manufacturing in the next little while because the use cases are, again, the same. And why? Because the platform is all transferable, right? Like 80% of the work is the same, whether we do a mining customer, whether it's the freight that Pete talked about, whether it's driver payroll or a manufacturing account. The smart contract is a smart contract, and the rate builds up, or the NFT gets generated, or the brand integrity elements for mining gets generated. So 80% of the work is the same. The only thing that changes is we're connecting with some systems upstream to get the relevant information to build the right business rules specific to every customers. And we'll connect to carriers or whoever downstream, depending on the outcome. But again, 80% of it is the same every single time, right? That's why it's very applicable. And it's quick to put together because the platform is the platform. It's just connections at the end of it, right? So thought it was important to show a bit of the diversity of what else we can do aside from those three big things that Jeff, Pete, and myself have shared with you. Eric, back to you to questions.
And thank you very much, gentlemen. Very enlightening. I mean, like I said in the beginning, those who have been following you and the work at DLT Labs over the last few years, we're amazed by the results, right? 97% reduction in disputes, but it's not just about that, right? There's so much more that DLT Labs is doing that we can do with blockchain. Driver pay, right? Who knew that you could use blockchain to build trust with driver pay? So two things that I kind of latched on to, Pete. You mentioned, right? You can't throw technology at a process that's broken, and that's what you did. Changing this process from 11 steps down to 5. Using technology. So yes, it's important to use technology. Blockchain is one of the great technologies that we can use, but we also have to look at our processes as well. And the other theme that I certainly latched onto was trust, and who does not need more trust in their supply chains. So let me get to the questions here, and we do have a few. And let me see if we can do that here. Let me try this functionality here for a change. So Ned, hey Ned, nice to have you on our session. Ned is asking, do you utilize RFID in tracking the containers or the trucks? And do you see using blockchain to facilitate the payment for the cargo? Well, that's a great question, right? And part number 3, are U.S. ports aware of this technology? Such a focus on getting containers from ships to trucks as fast as possible to increase revenue for the ports. Great job. So absolutely.
So Pete is smiling, so I'm going to let him have a first crack at it.
So great questions, Ned. Let me try and go in order here. We are not using RFID at the moment. The IoT information that we get from trailers are your service providers that offer the electronic logging devices, whether they be on the tractor itself or within the trailer. So no RFID at the moment. If it's sending out IoT information, though, we could receive it and process it. It's just an integration for us, right? Second question, do you see blockchain facilitating payment for the cargo, the goods on board? I'm assuming that question is correct. Absolutely. Yeah, so we're making the payments for the movement of those shipments, but there's no reason why this could not be extended to the goods that are on board. It's a contract between two trading partners. How much quantity is within that trailer and being shipped. We know the purchase order information currently that is going across many of these shipments. And so it would just be a matter of processing the invoice for the goods that are within that container as well. We've got the wrapper. We can do the ingredients within it as well. And then, are U.S. ports aware of this technology? I will tell you, few of them. We have reached out to a few. We have had a few with inbound interest in what we're doing. And I'm going to classify it more as North America in general. ports. We had a conversation with a port here in North America just yesterday, in fact. So they're becoming aware of it. And we're spreading our message more and more, and lots of application, without a doubt. The varying use cases that we discussed in terms of port operations there is quite large. It's not just, the containers coming into the port, but definitely a lot of activity of containers leaving the port and various activities going on there. So thank you for those questions. If there's anything to add, Francis or Jeff, please do add in.
I think you nailed it.
Yep.
Eric, can I don't want to do your host job. Can I take Franz Duverso's question in the chat? Because I just think it's a very good one.
You certainly may, but just before you do that, Francis, to add to the second question about payments, right? There's the cash portion of things, but there's the ownership transfer as well. And we have seen in the past some NFTs being used to transfer the ownership of grain, for example, at a port, right? So NFTs, we all think of, Bored Ape Monkey NFTs and all those things, but we can actually use tokens and NFTs to transfer cargo at ports and transfer ownership of cargo from one party to another. So that's an interesting use of NFTs. So back to you, Francis.
Yep. Thanks, Eric. So the question from France was, what's the onboarding process like for your clients and their partners, and how long does it take to start getting the benefits? I saw it in the chat, so I'm like, that's a great question. We gotta make sure we answer this one. It's super quick. We're talking a couple of weeks of onboarding, depending on the size. Because again, 80% of the business is already the battle is won because the platform is there. So, is it going to be 4 weeks or 8 weeks? It depends how many folks we have to integrate upstream, system-wise. Which now, the more we move forward, the more we already are integrated with some of the traditional shipping systems. So it actually is faster and faster. And downstream, if we take payments, for example, I'll use an example of one customer that we were going to do a bit of advertising for in the next little while. It's a very old established company in North America. They had 64 carriers to onboard, and we went through the list, and 62 of the 64 were onboarded already, right? So we literally had to onboard 2 carriers, which we can do by the end of that call, almost, right? So it's very, very quick from an onboarding standpoint, upstream and downstream. So it's a couple weeks, and we're live. And the benefits are happening very quickly because we're not an IBM model where we want to charge $1 million upfront. We want to charge as low as possible upfront, small number of dollars for platform usage. But really then, 90% of the bill is per transaction. So you have the transactions coming in and you built it the ROI, as Pete had the slide on ROI. That's why we encourage everybody to get on the ROI. If you know you're going to save a good chunk of money, which is typically always the case, then you have the volume, then you're saving right away, right? You're not fighting against trying to get $1 million of investment back and it takes you 6 months to get it back. It's not the case. It's transactional savings right away. So it's de-risking it for anybody who's trying to jump on this one because you barely have no risk, right? If you have the volume, you'll have the savings, right?
And to add to that, right, 70 plus carriers at Walmart, 70 IT systems, 70 levels of IT maturity potentially, and everything was onboarded, right? Marcia is asking, can you talk more about the ESG NFT connection, which is absolutely a fantastic subject?
Yeah, 100%. It's a great question, Martha. The requests we're having from 4 different continents, 10 different countries at least. Everybody wants to figure out how do we do that reconciliation on sustainability, so that we either have a couple of options in the hopper In the UK right now, we're working with a partner to basically do the NFT generation. Because again, the NFT generation is the same thing as an invoice being generated for the smart contract, and really figure out what is the governance around it and how do you reconcile it in a safe environment where nobody can tamper with this. And if you want to move the NFTs from one region to the other, because there's opportunities in some of the countries to move this around, and we govern all this transaction as well. So we're playing on that front, and we're playing on that front with, like, I don't know, there's 5 other players who are just asking us to help us with the ESG and how do we show a sustainability story? How do we capture it all together? So there's a requirement for the capabilities of, well, first the trust generated by the distributed ledger, but also that hyper automation, the data orchestration of the smart contract, because it gets very complex. And those companies they're big names. They want to be able to trust that they're advertising whatever sustainability improvement. So these are the things that are really, really bubbling up in the NFT/ESG sphere for us.
And from a regulatory requirement, you have the EU that has anti-greenwashing legislation coming into play. You have Canada that has child slave labor legislation that's coming into play, right? Are you able to prove that your supply chain is what it is?
Yeah, 100%.
Sogand is asking, we're seeing, how do you see the growth of blockchain in various fields? Which one do you think will have the most progress through blockchain?
It's a great question. I'll take a crack at it, and Jeff and Pete, you can jump in. For us, the use case with Walmart is very, very powerful. So we are really hearing the other retailers showing up to the party and basically asking for, how do I do this, right? How do I get on? So there's a lot of value in retail on the payment side, and same thing on the DSD side. So retail is going to be a very, very powerful sector for us. But it's really like on the payment side, it's everybody that has bills to pay, right? So it doesn't matter which industry you are. If you have bills to pay, it comes down to the ROI and the savings calculation is, so what's your match rate? And if your match rate is high, maybe you still have another issue, because question number 2 is, what is your tolerance? I've had folks who say, yeah, we're great, we got 91% match rate, but they have a $150 tolerance. So they're not winning. And the third one is, do you get the value of early pay? Because I was losing that value when I was at Walmart. I was giving it away to US Bank, and now I got it back. So whoever's got bills to pay, if I answer the question mostly on payment itself, because it's a big one, so that's anybody. Big focus on big box retail, because again, the Walmart use case resonates. But it's everybody. It's everybody that got bills to pay. It's everybody that wants to generate something where there is complexity that requires that data orchestration, where you want that trust as well, and that hyper automation. So that's why, hence the title, what if blockchain can do it all? Like, there's a whole host of other things we haven't touched on yet. I'm excited when I get stretched by calls and hey, can you do that? And then I get all excited thinking, oh, can we do this or not, right? And so far, we haven't come across anything that we can solve. So not one industry specific is a long answer to the question. So again, it really, like, it fits in a lot of areas for a lot of different industries.
Yeah, and I think one thing I'd like to add is on the freight side really is, a huge opportunity, and it stretches across, any industry with a physical product. So literally anyone with over $50 million or $30 million in freight spend can justify this, in the manner that Francis was describing, with an ROI, in less than a quarter, 2 months, 3 months. And we're actually going to take that ROI calculator that you saw Pete explain earlier and turn that into a web page that can actually be, run by folks to see how it would impact their business. So
it's a great tool. Thank you for making that public. So one last question, because we are 5 minutes due. I think it's a great question. How do you see providing vendors with compensation for freight loss or incomplete deliveries?
It's a great question. We haven't hit that yet, but it's the same answer to what about inside the cargo, right? So losing my voice now, my turn. And really what we've been talking to a few folks about helping govern the whole claims process between suppliers and retailers often because there is confusion there. And there's also two versions of the truth, right? So I think this fits in the exact same bucket. I see us playing on that very, very soon because the request is there and we're already working with a pretty big supplier on that. And I think we will have something at one point that governs those relationships so that shipper X gets fined from retailer Y. And we provide that one story there because there's always, I've seen it on both sides of the fence. And there's really two versions of the truth. It's actually the same dispute process as a rate when you're trying to pay a carrier when you think about it. So I think it's natural evolution. We just haven't got pulled into that in depth yet, aside from that one big customer, which I think is going to happen at one point. And I think it will be a win for the industry because right now it's a gray zone, right? It's a point of frustration between shippers and retailers because they just struggle to speak the same language on some of those fines and damaged goods and even broken pallets. Like, how do you assess that? Well, if we put business logic around that and we make it on distributed ledger so that it's one version of the truth, then we'll have a stronger outcome.
Again, trust, right? Trust in your partners, trust in the information, trust in a whole bunch of things, something we need more in the supply chain. So, folks, we're a bit past the hour. Thank you very much. Thank you, Francis. Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Jeff. Very enlightening. Great comments from the audience. Just to answer one last question, yes, we are recording, so we'll share the link to our YouTube channel, and we'll share the slides within a couple of days. And again, thank you very much for joining today. We are the Blockchain Supply Chain Association. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you.
Yeah, take care.
Bye-bye.